Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have a dear friend and colleague, Ashley, on with us. She is many things: a licensed integrative somatic therapist. She is a yoga teacher, a holistic wellness and somatic embodiment coach. All these incredible titles and experiences that she has. She works helping folks navigate life's challenges and confidence with authenticity and resilience. She works a lot with new moms and folks on their parenting and family journey. She's an LMFT, all the things. And I'm just so excited to have her here today because she has so much incredible wisdom and I think can really speak to a lot of the pain points around the stress and the drama of the holiday season, but also give us some really great insights on how to survive, and not only survive, but thrive through the season and beyond. So welcome, and I'm so excited to have you here, and it's so good to reconnect face to
Yes,
face.
same. I'm so excited to be here too. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So when you're thinking about this topic of like thriving, not just surviving during the holidays, I guess like what comes to mind and where do you want to start? What can you share with
Yeah,
us that would help?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm thinking there's just like a myriad of things, of course, similar to the holidays. There's a myriad of things that are
All the things.
all the things. And especially as a mom myself, it's there's like maybe even double that, which I didn't anticipate. And so even just speaking to um going way back to what I've observed of my mom and just learning from my mom of the different ways I wanted to show up in my motherhood and also maybe not so much. I just think that there's so much to know about ourselves throughout this whole process, the time of
Mm-hmm.
year and beyond. And so that's really what I've decided to put some intention towards this year for myself and my family is just different ways that I could be showing up and really as my best self. And that is not perfect. It may also be more fluid than anticipated, and that's okay. And I think that's a large part of where one can be in the holiday season, especially, is just embracing the imperfections and showing up as who we
Mm.
really are, even if that's easier said than done sometimes.
And how do you get to a place where you can like what does it mean to show up as you are? How does one even like know who that is, or how do we kind of come to a place where we're able to accept that or recognize that?
Yeah, absolutely. I acknowledge that it can be a bit of a privileged position to be in, to have a way to put some intentions forward because we might be already in the throes of the time of the year. We're already into December. So even just speaking to where we might be right in this moment and where I am too, is just noticing in this moment, how am I feeling? How am I feeling right now? Just taking a moment to
Mm-hmm.
just check in. And inherently where we might have an intention maybe earlier in the day around like, I'm gonna, get through this day and I'm gonna put my best foot forward. And what that looks like might shift. We might have to pivot. And so I do think that just having an inherent ability to take a moment, slow things down,
Hmm.
see what we're in saying internally, what is that intuitive sense saying, and go with that. And maybe we don't even know what it's saying, but we notice our body is saying something. And so that's a lot of what I do in my work too, is just inviting people to get in this space of just creating room for there to be whatever is showing up to show up and to just listen. And that can be, just taking a step aside for a micro moment to check in. It could also be, are we feeling more tension today? Is my neck feeling more sore? Is
Mm.
my body telling me something that, maybe isn't more typical of what I would want to be feeling? And then giving a moment to invite some shifting there too, whether it's taking a nice deep breath. Maybe it's planning for a walk later in the day, even if it's 10 minutes or less. Maybe you're even intentionally walking slower to go get your
Hmm.
groceries from the car and just breathing through that and just inviting some slowing down. And so we might not always know who we are or who we want to be, but we can always check in on a moment to moment basis and invite something different to be more helpful.
Yeah, and this was a theme that came up last week in conversation too around being more present. And so I think it's not lost on me that it continues to be brought up and continues to be a theme. And even if it sounds, like broken record, we need to hear it because we still all have such a hard time being present in 2024, almost 2025. And yet, like my guest last week was saying, and as we know, and what you're alluding to as well, is that like the science shows though it's imperative and it has so many benefits. And this autopilot, reactionary state of existence is just slowly killing us all. And yes, sometimes that's depending on like where people are at in life, like it's not just so easy to just turn off, and there's different reasons our bodies and our brains have adopted these, sort of patterns to live in. But what does it look like and what does it feel like, as you're saying, to practice little moments of peeking around the curtain and trying to get out of that, even just for like a few steps, a few breaths, a few seconds? And how can that help us reset? And then how can that help us micro shift even just our mood 1% or the trajectory of our day, even by a little bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for the polyvagal theory as well, just having this felt sense of safety and creating that. And we really need to know what our body is saying, in addition to, of course, all the thoughts we might have,
Mm-hmm.
and just slowing things down. And I think the other point that I really want to tie into, going back to the intentionality, a part of who we are inherently is having a sense of values. And I think that's also really important to tie into, especially during the holiday season, is just asking ourselves, what is truly important to me?
Yeah.
And just having an ability to tap into that and come back to that time and time again, is really important. If you're valuing time with your family or you're valuing peace, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you don't pick up the phone for somebody until you're in a good place, and then you can have that conversation. Or maybe you're setting more boundaries so that you have more time to make dinner a little bit later so that you can go for that walk, etc.
Yes, values are a hill I will die on always. And I think that they're so important to be not only aware but to participate in that choice and like naming our values. And I think giving ourselves permission that those might change and ebb and flow in different seasons and at different times and different stages of our life. But if we are not clear on our vision and our values, then we are not driving the car of our own life, right? Like someone else's. And that to me is like terrifying thought. Um, Even more terrifying than not being like 100% sure if this is all right, or like kind of winging it at times, but at least I'm in control of my life, which I am the expert on. And I think the holidays can be such a should time of year. And there's so many competing values and messages and vision around what like Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever other possible holiday you celebrate this time of year might be. What are those values and those things like in the proverbial they? We don't really always stop to ask like, well, what do I want to make it? Like even families, like the family you came from has their own, but now your family, whatever that looks like, you alone, you with kids, you with a partner, you with your friends, your chosen family, that's allowed to look different than the way your parents did or your caregivers or your grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever. And so I think it is a tricky time because there's so many competing really strong like I'm right messages, and I don't know that any are wrong, they're just not all right for you. And it's giving yourself that permission to say like that's okay too, and I can kind of decide what's right for me and my family. It doesn't have to be what's right for everyone else, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And even just giving yourself the space to even think about what those values are. Again, placing that intention is a great place to start. And then also tuning in. Absolutely.
So I know since you're a mom, and I know that like there's often a lot of um, things that come up around like guilt around wanting to make the holiday perfect or magical for your kids, or um, the shoulds come in stronger because it's really like, yeah, sure, you, Ashley, and what you want to do for Christmas, whatever, but like what you should do for your children or for their grandparents or their family that wants to see them, or so how would you recommend, or what are maybe some of the common uh dilemmas that parents can sometimes get into this season, and how would you overcome or help folks think through some of those? Because they're very real, and there's a lot of emotions tied up in all of that. And so I know it can get really tricky to untangle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I appreciate too that you're highlighting there could be again myriad of different possibilities for folks. I think that it again just coming back to what is important right now. It can absolutely be challenging, like you're saying, when we have kiddos that it's like, well, what is important for them, and how might that look different for them versus just me or just my partner, and also the family members that we're talking about too, because inherently we want to have things in a cohesive way as best as possible. And again, as a mom, we want to try to make everyone happy, and I think that this is exactly what you're speaking to too. So it might be having more clear communication, whether it's a clear set boundary around something like, hey, we can attend this family function for 2 hours, and then we're going to have to consider leaving. Maybe weather's a possibility. There's different ways too that things can come up and throw us some curveballs, and so
Mm-hmm.
being adaptable is going to be really important. And I know as a mom, it's part of the job, is being adaptable and amenable. So I think just rooting yourself in your body with whatever's coming up for you after setting that intention, having clear communication, and a lot of compassion, a lot of compassion
Mm.
for yourself, for your kids, for your partner, for your family. Because when you're setting a boundary or when you're, needing to pivot, that's a lot of energy. And so, a large part of another intention that I'm setting for this holiday season is, where is your energy going, and how can I invite that
Ah.
to come back in a way that it's, compassionate and also protected. And so, same for my kids and for my family. It's a lot around, what's important to you and how can we work together. And
Mm-hmm.
that may not always match. Kids want to spend more time usually doing something that what we actually have time for, and that's where that compassion comes back in. Yep, I know this is really hard. I hear you. Let's try to do something different. Maybe we can do this thing next time, or same with family. I really appreciate your offer to get together or stay longer. I would love to. And we really need to get going. It can look different. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to necessarily be around leaving, as my example, but that tends to be a more
Hard
common
point.
one that I'm hearing about, is how can we, try to meet people's expectations and meet our own, but also how can we grapple with when things aren't really matching up. And so that's where the compassion is really inherently needed as well.
Yeah. And I think this just reiterates how important it is to know your own personal and your nuclear family values, because if you're not clear on what those are, then it's much harder to stay steadfast or set those boundaries or to make those decisions, um, because you don't feel connected to the why.
Right.
And then it just feels like the guilt. It just feels like you're being mean, or it feels like you're not a good daughter, or you feel like you're a bad parent, or whatever. Instead, no, I'm honoring myself and my family and the things that are important to us. And then through that, I make every other decision. And it's okay if not everyone agrees with it. And it's okay if it makes me feel uncomfortable or sad or like conflicted, but the why is much more clear and firm. And so inevitably it is a easier, I use quotes because maybe it's not easy all the time, but it's like a more natural decision and a one you can stick behind than just making it just untethered, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just thinking about the energy that you're bringing to that event, knowing that you have an ability to stand in your truth around,
Yeah.
this works for me, this doesn't work for me. You're likely to show up and have a more mindful time. You're also going to have family members or even your own family who may be able to receive a different side of you. And so again, just really being intentional about your energy and having a way to stick with whatever the intention is for the time, for what it is that you're inviting a memory around, or
Hmm.
whatever it is that you're setting out to do. Just rooting yourself in that will give you inherent grounding as well. And when we're grounded, we show up more typically like our best selves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm thinking of like energy and like the first guess of December, just none of you guys know each other or talked about it, but like we were talked a lot about energy and how what the energy blocks that prevent us from the things we really want or really stepping into certain successes or jobs or visions or futures or whatever. And also just how we intentionally are choosing to think about our energy and spend it and where it goes and all of that. And I just like, I think sometimes people get a little weirded out with the word and they get like, oh, it's too woo woo, but it's not, it's real, you know, like emotions are energy, our bodies are like little atoms and whatever the fuck things those other ones are called, the ends, you know, like all the things rolling around and like doing stuff in our, it's energy. The moon is gravity pull, which is energy, like people are energy. So it's something we have to talk about, and whatever like lens you want to look at that through is totally fine, but it's all, it isn't something to be ignored. And I think that it is important to start considering a yes to this is a yes to using my energy in this way, or a yes to my future self in this way. And like, are those things that I actually want to pull from that reserve, or does my future self really want that? Yes. And how can I be more connected to the impact of the choice I'm making, instead of just, again, arbitrarily making decisions or on autopilot without thinking about what the cost is. Well, there might be a great benefit. There's always a cost in turn too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just speaking to that too, I'm thinking on a nervous system level where folks might be at this time of year,
Mm-hmm.
especially given all the things and being on autopilot actually reminded me of whether or not we're like right at the threshold of what we're actually able to tolerate in a realistic way. And
Mm,
we might not know that unless we're giving that time and space to check in, likely to pop out of our window and go into fight or flight and be just like rampantly doing things. And that's a large part of the memories that I have around the overextension of my mom wanting to please everybody and my mom wanting to, really make things look great when people are coming over, understandably so. Yes, having our house look a certain way is,
yeah,
whether that's a value to you or not, that might look different person to person. And I just remember there being some franticness around the holidays. And as a mom myself, I'm like, do I really like, is that a value of mine? Is that something I really want? And does that also
mm,
work for my nervous system? And so I've really started to embrace somatically, and that's a large part of my ongoing work with other women as well, that having a way to tap into where we're at is also a way for us to create that felt sense of safety, or at least an opportunity to, especially if we
yeah,
are kind of stuck in the array of all the franticness. And that's likely our nervous system saying, like, hey, we need to slow down. We don't need to do this. Or maybe we do. Maybe we really need to get to the store and get that last minute ham. I don't know. But there's
yeah,
reasons why our body does the things that it does. And there's a message there. And if we tune in and listen, we get the choice to decide, is this
yes,
something I want to be doing? Or is this something that I can switch? And then creating space for this switch, whether it's maybe making time for that breath or etc.
yes. And to feel empowered in that way is like half of the win.
Yes.
It just changes that like life might still have the long to-do list and there's still so much going on, but it's showing up and choosing it versus it happening to us changes the whole experience of how the rest of that day goes and how you feel in those experiences and how you consider all of those tasks. And so it's not saying that people can just throw it all out or not do or have the option to just totally do less, but just the mindset and the experience of choosing it instead of again being the victim to it is half the battle a lot of the time, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and even with these tools too, I've had moments where I've slipped back into
Yes.
survival mode as well, or maybe just inherently, the baby's going to get up from a nap. And so my husband and I only have so much time to get this XYZ thing done,
Right.
or whatever the case might be. I just, again, there's going to be things that happen. There's going to be the need for compassion and adaptability. And whether or not we have the tools can make the biggest difference as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we just like don't give our bodies enough credit for how much communication they're giving us all the time in so many ways, right? From like what your tongue looks like to headaches to tension to inflammation to hair health, nail health. I mean, like there's just so many cues of like, and it's not just because I was dehydrated, right? It's like your stress levels, your sleep, your diet, your movement, literally how you like your emotional state, like all of that contributes. And there's so many cues our body is constantly giving us, and we're just socialized and taught to really ignore a lot of those things, or not, or to put them in their box, like, you know, my physical health is just my physical health, this is just this. I think we're trying to be more integrative, but it's all still like very separate, and yet we have so much of the missing pieces and the information of like, and it's not even always big things, like these little things could change everything if you just kind of cue in or think about it or make that different choice or add this in. And yet unfortunately we still live in such like a segmented realm even within our own selves. And I think that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but to me it seems like that causes a lot of the chaos and the extra bullshit that I just don't think we need, but we've sort of set ourselves up in this unfortunate way in
100%.
on lots of levels, right?
100%. Yeah. And even as you're naming, if there's ways for us to think about what hasn't been working or what hasn't worked before, that's still valuable insight.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. It's all information, and information is power
yes,
for sure.
absolutely.
What would you say would be the, what am I trying to ask here? Like, where would be the starting point? Because I mean, this is like a lot, right? I think it's like great information. It's good stuff to keep chewing on. But for that person who's like, okay, but I'm living on like the edge, I'm full in it. I don't even know. Like, what would be maybe that like very simple starting point um, that we could offer, you know, that person just to get through the next 4 weeks or just enter into the new year just a little bit different, so to speak.
Yeah. I would ask that whether it's starting the day off with just having an awareness of how you want the day to go, or if you're already in the thick of your day, because I'm on Pacific time, so I'm not sure where our listeners are coming from, but maybe you've already been in the throes of your day. Just having a minute of grounding, and what that could look like is maybe you're just pausing as you're listening and just
Mm,
inviting this intuitive sense around like what is my body feeling, and you're scanning yourself from your head to your neck, your shoulders, your upper arms, your lower arms, to your hands, and just noticing all the way through your body if there's any sense of tension there. Maybe you're noticing right now that you're hungry. All of that is really good insight. And then what you do with that information might be the next step. So, whether you're taking that information and you're going and grabbing something to eat, maybe now you have the chance to decide what do you actually want to eat and what do you think your body needs? Or maybe you're driving right now as you're listening and you notice your hands are a little tight on the steering wheel. Maybe you take a breath and you just invite your hands to relax even by 1%.
mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're dealing with a tantrum right now amongst one of your littles, and you just give yourself a moment to just breathe. This can look different for everybody, and yet just having a moment to yourself to just check in with your body, that check engine light, and then choosing what your next moment could be could make all the difference, maybe for the rest of your day, or maybe at least for this next moment. And this can be done on a moment to moment basis.
I love that. And I think it's such a good reminder because it's not too dramatic, it's not too extensive. You know, it's you're already thinking about things, you're already spending energy on things. Why not just like shift it and spend a little bit more on that, on some of those prompts or thoughts that you've given us to think about? And then, yes, that information is that power that now you have reclaimed the seat in the driver's seat, and you can now choose your next move again instead of like it choosing you. And I definitely teach something similar. I mean, it's all the same stuff, but like thinking of that like daily body scan. Like, yeah, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I looking at? And what's sort of happening around me, right? And if I just like take that in first thing in the morning, at lunch, right before bed, you don't have to do anything with it. But if your internal thoughts are like, today sucks, and someone's screaming and you have to pee and you're like already sort of like anxious, then maybe there's a couple intervention points that can just like nudge you a little bit on a better course than if you hadn't taken the time to acknowledge any of that and just ran right into the first thing. Probably not going to be that good of a look because you got a full bladder, you're feeling anxious, and you're in a bad mood, right? Like you might still be in the mood, but you could at least go to the bathroom first, or, like, no, you're just going to hide out for 5 more minutes because like you're uninterested in like that mess out there for right now, if it's safe and an option to do so, or whatever else, right? But I do think it is such a, like, saying it is so simple, but it's not so simple to always integrate, but it has such a good impact. And the more you look for it and do it, the more automatic it becomes. And those shifts are just like seamless versus this whole thing that you have to think about doing. A lot of times
Yeah.
then it becomes more fluid of like, oh, I need some water. Oh, I gotta run. Oh, ooh, whew, need to stay here for a second. Like that, it just kind of becomes more natural because we're training our brain to stay in charge and look for those intervention points.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a marathon, if you will, too, to integrate as far as like, yes,
Yeah.
there's these small micro moments is what I call them that we can integrate, we can check in, we can invite a quick tool. And you are intentionally going to need to continue doing these things, but by doing this more intentionally as well, as you're saying, we're retraining our brain and we're also retraining our body to have a more clear communication system within itself so that we can
Mhm.
notice like, oh, I'm holding this bag a little bit tighter today, or my arm is really feeling it.
Yeah.
What do I do with that now? Well, maybe you need to delegate and ask for help. And it's okay to do that. So the other piece too that can be a really great caveat to doing this is that you will also inherently have more compassion because you're carving out that space to notice in a non-judgmental way, and then
Mhm.
also having the ability to claim back your power. And then when you feel like you don't have that power, you can notice that and be like, oh, well, this might be the next step. And these are all just tip of the iceberg things too, as
Yeah.
far as the things that I like to teach and to invite people to do, especially if you like to dive deeper than we're talking about now. That's certainly something that I offer as far as both and I'm a therapist. So I do this in a holistic and integrative way, as you were saying too, around just having a way and space to do more therapeutic and healing. And then I also do group coaching. And so just having a community of moms to work together through what might be coming up and to be there for each other. And then also have more tools to navigate stress and just embrace calm, and then hopefully manifest your ideal motherhood by showing up as who you truly want to be, and to have an ability to do that, having more tools and resources in that community as well.
Yeah. And you can definitely find all of the ways to contact Ashley in the newsletter. And any last word of wisdom, summary thought that you kind of want to leave folks with today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about like this being a new era of the holidays, if you will, by just giving yourself the empowerment, give ourselves permission for things to not necessarily look perfect, and just having the ability to give yourself the greatest gift, which is being present and present with others, and having an ability to
Mm,
reclaim that energy and power to do that.
I love that. I love it. It's a great way to end today's talk. I really appreciate you being here today. I think we left everyone with some really great things to think about, and your um, wisdom and expertise is always welcome, and I love learning from you. So I appreciate you being here, and I hope everyone has a really great week. Christmas next week if you celebrate. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you guys later.
Happy holidays, everyone. Thanks for having me.